General Protocol Spaces, banking on freedom.
So welcome everyone to General Bull 47 of N, and a little bit of a clickbait title, Who Has What It Takes to Be a BCH Builder? But I'd really like to just take this as a literal chance to talk about, just that. Like what does it take to be a BCH builder? So a little less on the why BCH and more on the builder skill side. What does it actually take to be a builder in the first place? Whether that's entrepreneurial or software
Is
development
it
or
just
whatever
me?
it is.
I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, I was hearing the introduction fine.
Yeah, it's fine on my end as well.
We're just gonna have to kick him off. Okay, so can somebody send him a message? So yes, just focus on like the what and the how and that kind of thing, the skills and what did it take and what does it take and what do you have to study and what did you learn and so forth, and just kind of tell a story of what it takes to be a developer for in general, and then a builder for Bitcoin Cash as well. So yeah, just looking for some stories a little bit today to see how everybody has got to where they are in terms of their skills and abilities and the things that they can do. So to get started, I didn't really have any particular order of things to do in, but did any of you want to get started? Tell us who you are, and you have some particular story about yourself in general as a developer or a builder, and then specifically with BCH, like how that went with BCH. I don't know, Mathieu, Jim, did one of you guys want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So I guess my story is that I was a student when I was first following BCH closely. So that's 2018, 2019. So I guess that was an advantage that I had because I had ample of free time, and I was very interested in seeing everyone, like seeing developers doing stuff like in the open source space, because you can like kind of watch what's happening and what everybody works on. So that was really interesting to me. And then because I had the time, then I kind of looked into or tried to follow some of these tutorials. Back then, there were mainly blog post tutorials. I think read.cash, there were a few tutorials of those. And then just trying out some, getting started is often the hardest part, because with programming, you often need a tool chain set up before you can even get started using some technology. So in my experience, that was often the hardest. But then once you actually just follow a tutorial, then you kind of get at least what the basics of it, of what everybody uses is. So in my instance, I was trying out BCH JS. So I was playing around with JavaScript, and and learning over time. So in my instance, it was very important that I was able to ask people questions, so that I was kind of on Telegram in different groups, and just whenever you were stuck or didn't know what to do, ask questions. There's multiple people here in the space who have helped me in the beginning, in the humble beginnings, when things didn't work and I was asking basic or sometimes stupid questions, but of course those are allowed, and I was always helped in a very nice way. And I try to do the same now for others. So I think that is also an important aspect, is when you get started, you need to ask questions when you get stuck. I think on this aspect, AI might help, but still you will run into things that you cannot easily solve. And instead of giving up, it's much better to just ask different people and see who's willing to help and make time. And keep learning. I think in the beginning you need to be curious. It also helps to just learn some tools, see what's out there, learn about what different technologies exist. And this is very important, because if you don't know what already exists, then whatever idea you have to build, you don't know how to get started. So I would say, even if you don't have an idea, if you know which technologies are out there and you start playing with it, then the idea might come at any time. But if you start with an idea, then of course you can pick up the skills, but it's harder because people often take ideas which are very hard to accomplish. They see like these cutting edge ideas, which would take a whole team or like novel research, and they say, oh, I want to do this as my first project. But your first project will likely be small and kind of crappy, and you need to improve over time. So starting with the tooling, from my experience, was like a helpful starting point, and then asking questions. That would be my two biggest takeaways from when I got started.
Dude, that's extremely helpful. Like that's probably a good summary of what anybody should take on. And I actually love your point that you said about starting small and just seeing what tutorials kind of point you towards, and just starting on something small. Because yeah, that happened to me too back with when we first had covenants on BCH, right? When we had op the one that allows
Check data sig.
yeah, CDS, yeah, CDS. So the check data sig, when that first appeared, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Hypothetically, as a theoretical thing, that's kind of neat. But then when Uname actually showed me the first contract, which was the AnyHedge contract, like the concept of the AnyHedge contract, and he was like, here's how it works. And I was like, oh, wait, we can just program the money now. And he was like, yeah, that's the whole point of this. And I was like, oh shit, that's not all that complicated. You can actually program the money, and and all of a sudden, like you said, all these ideas started to come out. So yeah, I think that's great advice to just start with tutorials and then see where your mind goes with it. I love that. Can I ask a quick question, Manju? So do I get it correct that because your study, your study in university was not anything technical specifically, right? So is that correct that your development history and BCH development history started at the same time? They were the same thing?
Yeah, so I studied economics, so it was not really related. I think we had one programming course. It was even using IFOL, object-oriented programming in IFOL, so that was really not useful. And then I took on an optional course on Python. It was like only like half credits even, so it was really few hours. So for me, yeah, I always knew that I was interested in software, but I decided against studying software because I felt that, I didn't follow the cutting edge. And also, I think in hindsight, it might have been good because I might have lost some of my passion if I had to do it as homework or something, or as assignments, or using archaic tech that I was never going to use. Uh, and also, programming, just software in general, is a field where you can actually become self-taught, as they call it, even though you use, of course, many resources, blog posts, YouTube videos, now AI, but yeah, whatever resources you can get your hands on, books, but you kind of fill in your own learning journey. I also use like online courses. Code Academy helped me a lot to get kind of just the basic understanding of what is a full stack developer. Because if you want to do projects alone, then it's not helpful if you only know like one part of the stack. It's much more helpful if you want to start off doing solo projects. If you have a basic understanding of like, oh, this is how I do HTML and a website, and this is how I do like a very basic server which can maybe host data, and this is which part interact with the blockchain, so that you can kind of zoom out. Because in the beginning also it will be hard to get anyone on board with your ideas or your projects. So if you can kind of prototype across the stack, as I was saying, the front end and the back end, and then the blockchain part, I think that's super important. For example, the first real app I made was the refresh timer project. So it was a project using cash scripts where like one person won a pot of prize money, semi-randomly, because it would be the last person who participated in 24 hours, and you could always refresh this timer. And the special aspect for me about this project was that it was using simulated states with cash script. So it was one of I think the first main chain cash script contract that was actually using this simulated state feature. But all other parts of the project were very non-impressive. Like there's a very ugly UI, and it was a very basic server. And it was also not using a wallet connector, any trustless setup. It was kind of trusted, where you send money to a server and the server would interact with the smart contract. So overall, lots of room for improvement. But it taught me a lot of things, and this was very helpful that I could, as a in my free time, when I was a student, kind of learn all these things and then take it seriously right after graduation, I got first, did an internship with General Protocols, then like sharpened my skills there, and then afterwards, with joining CashCrypt and some of my own projects, was really able to go full time into BCH. So that's kind of my story, how I went from studying economics, doing coding on the side, to becoming a full time BCH developer. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's perfect. I bet you'll remember that first program forever, right? Your first crappy program is kind of like your
Yeah,
first love,
exactly.
right? It's like, yeah, I made that. That was awesome. Right?
And it
It's
was
there's a
awesome.
feeling there.
It felt incredible, even though
Right?
looking back, it was.
Yeah, no, it totally feels incredible when you first realize you have that power. Oh, I can just make things that other people can use and do stuff. I love it. Wow, and yeah, you got started fast and moved fast. I was gonna add as a side point there, there's some people who go through formal education, either directly or tangentially related to development and building, and then there's some people who just totally do it self-taught, and they also end up, of course, learning and using some of the same learning material, but very, very different starting points. And in my work history, I've worked with both people from both groups that were fantastic, right? People who were formally trained and use that to their best ability, and they also have just good engineering ability. And then also people who are completely self-taught and then come at it backwards and end up not backwards, but I mean they come from the other direction and they end up learning just as much and being just as capable. Or they're not necessarily related, right? Anybody who comes at it with the right passion to build ends up being very good at it, as long as they've got the some amount of ability and intelligence, talent, whatever. In any direction you come at it from, you can be successful. That's really cool to hear.
So one thing also that I think is relevant to add, if I can expand on my story, is also that when I was able to join working on CashCrypt as being part of a team together with Roscoe, then I was, because we do pair coding sessions, so with the two of us on a live call, and then you're just able to ask any question, learn about the thought process behind any change, or how you approach new features or testing, and then you can kind of learn from a senior developer, even though Roscoe is not much older than me. He studied computer science and he's been doing this longer, so for me it was super helpful to be able to chat and learn from someone more senior than me, because you can learn a lot from like resources, but being able to directly talk to someone who's more senior is also very helpful. It's kind of like a mentor role, and I think you will find that many people say having a mentor can greatly accelerate or help your progress.
Right. And Roscoe is probably an exceptional mentor as well. He's so easy to work with and very uh I don't know how to say it, just patient and easy to get along with and communicate with. So you found the great guy to work with at the beginning there.
Yeah, so
Wow, that's a great one.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
in
go
the
ahead.
beginning also, when not too many people were using CashCrypt, and so for me it helped to find something I could contribute to. So back then it was mainly docs changes, and as I said, trying out examples, and then in some of the examples there were mistakes, or like didn't work out of the box. In some cases I was misunderstanding the examples and I was actually a problem, but anyway, this led me like to show that I was interested and motivated and wanted to help in whatever way I could. And it was also when I started using GitHub and these collaborative tools to actually help with existing projects. So this went very organically. So this wasn't planned at all. But just if you give value or you try to contribute, um, and then this happened to become sustainable, or then you can often receive something back, I guess. So just if you can provide value in any way, give feedback, detailed bug reports, things like that. Maybe even feature requests or just brainstorming, adding enthusiasm or sharing like news about the project. I think this is all a way that you can get involved, because there is no, in many of these open source projects, there is no fixed team size. Like the team size is whoever wants to contribute and does good work and opens patches, PIs, and is kind of involved and becomes involved. So it's not like an official team or group or organization where you need a membership card. Often in open source, this is different, of course, with business use cases. But in open source, you can kind of just get started and join without asking any permission, just by adding value.
Totally agree. It's worked like that with all the projects that I have been into. Uh, there's sometimes a misunderstanding where people say, the people that do the work are the ones who, have influence or whatever, and it's like, yes, that's true. It doesn't mean that they make all the choices, but it's like a prerequisite, right? If you're not actually providing value and doing something valuable and helping out, then you surely won't have nobody's going to listen to you, right? It's like the starting point, and then when you do that, people want to help you too. Like Roscoe helped you out, and others helped as well. So yeah, absolutely, it's a great starting point. That's a fantastic point. That just trying to do something valuable for a project or for other people is always a good starting point for anything. I think that's true for anybody, right? Entrepreneurs, developers, anything. All right. I was gonna ask next, if it's possible, Jim. Um, would it be all right to ask you, like, both BCH, but then also a little bit about just generally how you got into building? So for people listening to understand what it takes, what it took you to get started, and then what it took you to get into BCH. Like, how hard was it, and what was the point in time that you jumped in there?
So for me, so I started developing probably when I was pretty young. I would have been like 12 years old and playing with like
Okay.
C, C++. And I think at that point, my aim was like to become a video game developer, and then started reading like stuff when I got older and kind of got into like the whole banking system thing. So became like a huge fan of Bitcoin. I never actually wanted to develop for Bitcoin. I wanted to make products with Bitcoin, but then, the whole like 1 megabyte block cap thing happened and BCH was created. And at that point, that's when I kind of dived into BCH development. So I had like a little bit of an understanding of how Bitcoin worked, and I hadn't really like dug into the depths of it. Like I didn't know anything about the VM or anything like that. I just kind of knew at the high level how blocks are mined, uh, how to use like abstractions to send transactions and things like that. But ultimately, I'm like mostly self-taught. I did like go to what we call like a TAFE here, but at that point, I was more sort of just kind of to be blunt about it, siphon government money and spend my time drinking for the most part. Yeah, so uh, most of my thing, it really is like, and I kind of emphasize it as well. I really think you got to have a passion for programming to be good at programming. One of the things I noticed, like even in my course, is there are a lot of people that just really weren't that passionate about it, but they're kind of like, oh, it's IT, high paying position, etc. And usually they used to make very like didn't make great programmers because they weren't really that interested in it. It was more like a step-by-step thing. They didn't really want to have to go out and look up information, learn new things, learn new frameworks or any of that kind of thing. So yeah, no, it's I think, like, in my opinion, the biggest like thing that you really do need to get going is just probably passion about programming, engineering, and being resourceful as well.
Being resourceful, yeah, yeah. That definitely rings true for me. The difference between people who are just mailing again, just doing whatever it takes to check the boxes and get by, and then those who actually enjoy it and find it interesting and are willing to invest time into getting better and learning new things. Yeah, there's definitely some kind of line there between the groups, right?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Yeah, the people that actually enjoy it are usually going to do a really good job of it. I mean, uh, I think that's the problem with like programmers burning out as well. Once they stop enjoying it, they kind of stop for one, being productive, and then they don't really care about whether what they've done is actually a good job as well. So not that that's like their fault. Some projects just get kind of too heavy, but yeah, ultimately I think like enjoyment and passion in doing it are actually really, really important.
Well, from a building like development perspective, when you switched over from just your abstract high level understanding of Bitcoin into doing some kind of building with it, so you were already a very experienced developer at that point, as I understand it, right? Like many years of experience. And so was there any part of that that was actually difficult, or was it just a matter of, oh, it's another thing I have to just look it up and figure it out, and just another thing to add to your toolbox? Or was there actually some difficulty there?
No, it's pretty graspable, I think. At the same time, I mean, like the whole smart contract structure does require like a different way of thinking. It still takes me like a few minutes to, when I'm working with like Peter Scriptash, it does take me a few minutes to kind of switch into that mindset. But for the most part, I think it's not really too difficult to understand. It's just sometimes a little bit convoluted, and takes a certain mode of thought to kind of solve the problems that you're trying to solve. But yeah, I wouldn't say like, as long as you're kind of resourceful, ask the right questions, and know how to find the right information, I feel like things are mostly mostly learnable, I would say.
Nice. Okay. That's good to know. They're very different, right? Matthew coming from, that's his first experience, and then with you where you already had a whole mountain of experience and sliding into it. Quite different, but still, you just got to be resourceful, and like Matthew said, in some more detail, finding tutorials and resources and trying to figure things out. Same story, I guess. Yeah, we have a lot of other builders here. Any of you guys want to tell your story, like for people listening to understand what it took to get started, and whatever it is that you do, and what it took specifically when you started doing stuff in BCH as well?
Yeah, so can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear, sounds good.
Okay, all right. Well, I think my my story is maybe a little bit unusual, or everybody is on their own unique path. But before I started the podcast, which was in January of 2021, it was because at the end of 2020, I had some sort of circumstances in my life come around to the point where I was sort of at a little bit of a loose end, or rather at a very low point, I guess, in my life, during the pandemic and everything that was going on with that. And the BTC price was skyrocketing again. So there was more sort of discussion about crypto, and I hadn't been as involved in Bitcoin. So I looked back into it and found that the split had happened with XEC, and Amori had been kicked out, who I had previously seen, as the self-appointed benevolent dictator. And I thought, oh, wow, BCH is really doing it. Like, that's truly incredible that the network has once again resisted some sort of centralized authority imposing itself. And so I was thinking, why is BCH not the number one coin? Like, why, at the time, I think it was about rank 9. And I was thinking, it's so obviously so much better. Like, why wouldn't it be at the top? And of course, there's actually tons of reasons which the BCH community at the time, now it's a bit more realistic, but at the time was busy sort of denying and coping about, like, the network effect, the massive liquidity, the on-chain transaction volume, just the amount of discussion in general. So I was listening to the Bankless podcast to find out what was going on, and also a little bit of Peter McCormack, what Bitcoin did. And I was thinking, these shows are just nonsense. Like, they're completely just full of propaganda. There's so many lies that they tell, or that they don't even know are lies. They just are plain ignorant about it. And I thought, surely I can do better than this. Like, there's no way that these shows that have, hundreds of thousands of subscribers or whatever, all these downloads and all that, and it's all just propaganda. Like, I'm sure I can do better than that. So that kind of was part of what sparked my resolve to start the podcast. And the answer, of course, is, can I do better? And as we can see now, well, it's a bit of yes and it's a bit of no. So it's yes, in the sense that I think I was right, that I was able to put out stuff that had a lot less propaganda and was able to more accurately foretell a lot of what was going on in the industry and so forth. So I was right about having that one small advantage. But at the same time, it's no, in the sense that, look, my show is still tiny compared to Bankless or compared to what Bitcoin did at the time that Peter McCormack left it. And so really it's kind of a case of, if you can see that you have an advantage in one area, you should jump in and start hammering away on that. But in the process of doing so, you'll discover that actually the people who are calling the shots and who are currently in the mix of whatever or doing things a certain way, well, they've got a lot of things sorted that you don't, which, I mean, I guess I maybe rationally could appreciate or understand at the time, but it sort of takes going through that process to really drill it into you. Like, okay, Peter McCormack is not perfect, but on the other hand, the amount of proof of work of his 800 episodes that he'd done with all these different people in BDC, all the conferences he'd been to line up those interviews, all the hours preparing those interviews, all the putting the distribution out, hiring people to do his media stuff, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even if he's completely wrong about Bitcoin, he was still doing like an insanely better job than anybody in BCH ever was or has so far by a huge margin. So I think that was really just a learning point. You want to have that attitude of, surely I can do better than this, but then the process of actually putting it into practice will teach you that maybe the people who are currently calling the shots, maybe they don't have everything right, but they probably got a lot right. And that even the resources you have is also enough to get started. Like, I didn't know anything about podcasting or making media content or literally anything. I just opened up my laptop. Almost everyone has a laptop, and basically everybody has a smartphone. And there you go. You already have a camera, you have a microphone, you have access to the whole world of information via the internet and everybody who's busy doing anything, basically. So you already have enough to at least get started. And something that Scott Adams has said, which I really like, is that something that's going to be successful, people like the first version. Like, if people like the shitty version, they're going to really like the good version, obviously, once you've improved it. But if you start something and just like the first 10 people who look at it, all of them kind of think, yeah, I don't really like it, then you're kind of, maybe you're just not onto something that's going to work. You want to think to yourself, what can I make in under 3 hours, like one evening? What's the shittiest possible version of my idea that I can make? And then you want to put it out there and see if it already gets, it doesn't need to get, obviously, millions of subscribers overnight, but it needs to have at least some kind of spark of people responding to it. And once you've got that, then you iterate from there. And if not, maybe try something else.
Nice. Yeah, definitely validate. That's true. And I think almost every field, right? You got to validate your ideas. Don't go off in your own wonderland where you imagine how everything's going to be. You got to actually get in there and see what people think about your whatever it is that you're doing. So that was your kind of jump into the deep end of media, right? Like just straight into it from, you said, without having that kind of background or practice or experience in the past, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and it comes from a lot of things, I think another idea that I really like is, okay, there's good ideas and there's bad ideas, and there's good founders and there's bad founders. But what makes the difference is usually not the idea or the founder, it's the idea founder synergy. And so when I was thinking about, starting from like a mission of like, how am I going to make BCH the global reserve currency? I was thinking like, well, what would be the highest leveraged, most impactful thing that could be done towards that? And I decided it would be a podcast, because I thought, look, if Joe Rogan decided that BCH was going to be the global reserve currency, he could probably make it happen, because even if he just got his, whatever, 13 million listeners an episode, even if they all adopted BCH, or even half of them, that would be enough to start to trigger a global adoption in it. Like any cryptocurrency which had genuinely 6 million people using it for transactions amongst themselves. So then obviously the question was, well, can I get Joe Rogan to do that? And I thought, probably not. Maybe worth a try, but probably not. And then it was like, well, okay, I'm going to have to be the Joe Rogan. And so I've got to have a 13 million listener podcast, right? And the other thing I was thinking about was, him and like Taylor Swift. If you had Taylor Swift, also she has her Swifties, her rabid fan base or whatever the hell. If she decided BCH was going to be the global reserve currency, then it would happen pretty much overnight, basically. And so then that was why then later, even in that first year, I was already started making music. And I think there's a lot more that we can kind of do with that as well too. But that's another thing. Like, I'd never made any music before. I'd never made a song. But yeah, kind of the gear the stuff you already have, you can work with the resources you already have. And if you just stick at it and you keep investing your time and energy into, like, that first song that I made, which now is just paying off in perpetuity as the opening music for each episode of the podcast, that took like over 6 months of work to do. That was well before there was AI and everything. But yeah, in terms of like writing the lyrics, and it's all like the drums, I think we made on Logic, but I played all those guitar riffs myself. I came up with the solo. I had to do the rap like hundreds of times to get it sounding kind of nice. Then we made the like video clip. It was literally just me and two mates at, like, Canary Wharf, like all that kind of stuff, right? And now if I was going to make a song, well, there's AI, but even then I would still be able to do it much, much faster. But so that first time, you just have to persist with it, I think.
That reminds me of what Mathieu was saying about the tool chains. Anything you get started in, there's all these just basic grammar-like fundamentals that you can't even, they're just a non-starter if you don't have some level of that, like the tool chain, the basics. And just getting those alone is a huge job and a learning process in itself.
Yeah, but it's fun, and that's like what Jim
fun.
said.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. You enjoy it. It should be something that you're passionate about and something that you really care about, because otherwise you'll get bored and you'll wander off. But it really is, and I think people underestimate how big the impact is of just like simple things. Like, even if you said to anybody, okay, I'm going to start a podcast, and they would say, oh yeah, that's easy. And it's like, it is easy in the sense that, okay, 1, get a microphone, 2, get a video camera, 3, press record, 4, talk about something for an hour, 5, upload it somewhere. Like, if you describe it in that way, literally anybody, you could have the lowest IQ in the world, basically. You could still like put those steps together and produce something. But it's not as simple as that, because firstly, you actually have to do it, even if that's very simple. And even if you can do all that in like 2 hours, 99.99999% of people never do. And then, of course, getting started is not enough. You have to be consistent. Actually, nobody in the world starts a podcast that's a huge hit on episode 1, unless they already had a huge platform from something else. But, when you're starting anything with your first project, it's going to take a lot of time and effort before it's good enough that it can compete at the global scale, which is what's needed these days. Today, you're competing against literally the entire world at anything that is not kind of physically bounded. So that might seem overwhelming, but even just doing that first 2 hours, like that's already put you ahead of 99.9999% of people, because none of them have ever started a podcast at all. And then, of course, it gets exponentially harder from there. But so does the sort of payoff and help you get along the way too.
The payoff and help, and also just if it's actually something you want to do and that you enjoy, the enjoyment of it happens too, right? I remember the first software project that and it's like Machi and you were saying, like the part of getting it out there was like 10 times more work than the actual like development of the software itself. And the first time I put it out, and the first comment I got where they were like, oh, here's this thing, it's pretty cool, and you have a bug here, and then they made like a blog post, because this was back in the day when like blogs were still popular. They made like a blog post about it, and that was super motivating. I was like, holy shit, somebody actually saw this and used it. This is amazing. Yeah, so the rewards come with it as well, right? Yeah.
Well, that's why you say, like, I have this kind of theory. I don't know, maybe I need a name for it, or it probably already exists in the psychological literature somewhere. But basically, that the whoever wins in a competition is usually just whoever is having more fun. Because if you're the side that's having more fun, you're going to work harder, you're going to stick at it for longer. People who are not having fun, at some point they give up, right? Like, you can't just trick yourself into, I'm going to grind through this perpetually. It's not going to work. So that's why you can see that in a lot of what I try and bring into the community as well. And I think Fiendish as well does a great job of this, at just trying to make it fun, just having some meme groups, having some discussion places where people generally have a positive, upbeat kind of attitude, doing things that are a bit like quirky and weird and interesting and all of that. Like, it's like I talked about with Paul Stortz as well too, where it's just to have a good party. Like, BCH needs to be the best party in crypto for it to win, and that doesn't mean it needs to be the biggest initially, but it needs to be the one where it has just the highest energy, the most people laughing, the most people smiling, the most people having a good time, and the most people just creatively expressing themselves. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that actually at the moment, which is why we're winning, but we can always look to improve on it, obviously.
Yeah, I can corroborate that. When I've had fun and been motivated, I mean, sometimes it's fun. There's other types of motivation too, but for somehow I'm motivated to do the thing. I can do it, for a long time and get a lot done. And when the opposite side of that is something I learned too, where I used to think, well, if there's something I need to get done, even if I hate it, I'll do it and I'll get it done. And you can definitely do that to some level, but then there's some kind of limit to it, right? Where eventually you're just like, yeah, no, just enough of this. It's not something I'm gonna spend my time on. So there is something there to it. I think Jim was saying the same, right? Jim, that developers who aren't really into it.
Yeah, absolutely. You just lose productivity, and you just end up like staring at code for ages, and you don't really do anything.
Right.
Yeah, but like you said, like some stuff you have to do. It's like I can't fucking stand doing translations. But we had to do that for BCH Bull, and that that was tedious, and like you do just kind of hammer through it so that you can get back to things that you actually enjoy doing, I think.
Yeah, but it's actually a valuable thing, right? As you get older and you learn, these are the things that I enjoy and these are the things that I don't. So when you're going to have to go into one or the other, and you got to like set your mindset for getting it done if you've got to do it.
Yeah,
it's a valuable thing to know.
And now you just try and make AI do it for you instead.
Or someone else. That's really the whole point.
Others what to do.
The point is that, whatever you think is boring and you hate it and you absolutely do not want to be involved in it, to someone else, that's their favorite thing in the world. That's like what they're fascinated by and they're an expert at and so forth. So really, I mean, to some extent, yes, you've got to just have some discipline and, some things are just the boring parts of the job kind of idea. But if anything that is more than very briefly like annoying you as a thing that you're doing, well, you should be looking to outsource it or collaborate with somebody who loves that, because as strange as it is, the world has 8 billion people and a lot of them are into all kinds of stuff that you think would be just fucking dead boring, and they will kill it at that and love doing it the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, like software developers and salespeople meeting is one of the best examples of that, right? Where they just look at each other and they're like, "How? What? How can you?" You know what I mean? Like the difference in what they enjoy and spend time doing is just the chasm is huge.
Yes, yes, but it produces the best results. So yeah,
It
definitely.
does, yeah. Specialization is one of humanity's great strengths. So let me ask, Saisha, are you there? I don't think we ever got a mic check. Can we do that? Are you there? Can I hear you?
Check, check. Can you hear me?
Hey, I hear you very clear.
Awesome.
Could you tell us a little bit of the same for yourself? You know, your story on development, how you actually got into it, not the why so much, but like the what it took to get into it, and then also specifically on BCH, what it took to get into that as well.
My story is a little bit different. I guess everybody has their own story. I had a Perl class in high school like 22 years ago,
I'm
and so
sorry.
I learned the yes. So yeah, I learned like the basics of like what loops are and stuff back then, and then nothing for the next 22 years. I just did hardware side, doing servers and networking and stuff like that. And then once getting into BCH, I just wanted to do more and get more involved and have more of an impact. And for me, that what made most sense for me was to get into coding and start making things, because just needing more people to do that. Um, so for me, it was mostly jumping into, I guess, Matthew jumping on with Roscoe, and then I was kind of jumping on through Matthew. So it's kind of rolling downhill in the sense of helping each other. So I was using lots of cache script tutorials and using like Pat's Wallet Connect stuff once that came out, and just kind of checking the initial tutorials, getting like that minimum product of like actually being able to do something. And it's once you do like that first transaction or something, it's just like, yeah, that feeling of just, wow, I can make anything type thing. But after that
It's real,
22
right? It's
years,
a real feeling
oh yeah,
where you feel
it's
like, wait, I can just do this, and this is money, and I'm programming it, and yeah, there's something to
yep.
it.
I vividly remember the first time that happened for me, because I don't do things the easy way most of the time. And for me, it was like technically my first language, my first ever coding language was Solidity. That was where I started. So I started making a project with it, which was that Fog of War thing I did a presentation on a little bit. And um, I didn't start simple. And that would be my biggest thing with people, which has been gone over here, is start simple. Take the most basic thing you can do and do that. Because for me, it's like I was like a third of the way through that project and I hadn't even done a transaction yet. I was just like building it out and frameworking all these different systems and building them up. And then once I did that first transaction, it's kind of like hit me where it's like, this will be real. Like it will actually work type thing. So
That's wild. Solidity was your first like actually used programming language. That's wild.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
I mean,
Makes sense.
I guess I did like a super basic website with HTML, CSS like 20
Sure.
plus years ago. So, but yeah, basically Solidity was my first.
Nice.
So to me, that
Also,
would
I
be an
want to
example of I
I
was just gonna
just
say
want
that'd
to
be
say that. Ah, sorry, that delay is killing me. But I just want to say that your Bliss presentation goes into great detail on this. So anyone listening and who wants to hear Sayoshi's full story, yeah, definitely check out his Bliss presentation from last month. I just want to plug that for you.
Thank you.
I'll find a link to that and share it in the Twitter space thread also.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say that my big takeaway for people would be just don't be afraid to jump in, even if it's something like you've never coded before and you're thinking like I would never be able to do blockchain coding because it seems so complex and stuff. Whether it's that or it's a basic programming language, it's all the same in the end to me, anyways. Where it's like it's just an iterative process. You have to pick a point somewhere and just start learning. And if that's doing Solidity or if that's doing cache script and just going up from there, then that's what you do.
What was it? So I said no why, but apparently, according to all of us here so far, the motivation is actually very important. What was it that motivated you? What was the impetus that gave you that ability to go from Perl 22 years before to suddenly programming money and Solidity? Like, what was that?
So it's probably going to be the same area that most people here are in, where they just want to see the world be better. And money is the root of a lot of evil. And I could see society being drastically improved if something like a crypto became actually used, and all of the government corruption, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, suddenly having a solution for some of it. So to me, it's just about trying to do something better for the future for everyone.
Yeah, I can't say my motivation is very different. Thank you. Well, thank you. So yeah, okay. Let's ask Harvey, who's here also. Harvey, did you have a similar kind of path? Like what did it actually take to get into to building? Or and then specifically with BCH, what did it take to get into it?
So I started out when I was like 13, 14, just writing in Java for Minecraft mods. And I was just following tutorials, didn't know what I was doing.
Hell yeah.
But had a lot of
Java,
fun.
that's a hell of a starting point for programming.
Probably the worst code you'll ever see, but gotta start somewhere. But had a lot of fun doing that, and was just kind of would dabble into the web, and then slowly just progress into more of that. And I'd heard of Bitcoin and like knew roughly what it was, didn't really understand it. But I think the real gateway into like wanting to work with it was in the 2016 2017 3 Blue 1 Brown video, where you went through what a blockchain was and how it worked. And then it was like, oh, this is like incredible. It's the black magic has been revealed. And so I kind of wanted to play with the encryption. And I found the cryptography really fascinating. So I would kind of just play around with that, see what I could do with it. Because being able to see the whole funds on the blockchain, but knowing it's secure was, just fascinating to me. And then as as the split happened, I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. This is like a technological marvel, and now it's just being destroyed. So I kind of just wanted to see it succeed because it was in a technological sense, just because it was fascinating, and just want to follow along and see what would happen. So I just kind of mostly spent a lot of time playing with the cryptography of it, I guess.
Interesting. So that was your entry point, was playing around with the cryptography, like programming or just doing it with some kind of tools, or
accidentally implementing like the decoding and like 2 whiffs and stuff. Just looking at the what it was, what actually encoded those things, and like converting between them.
so the other part, the building, the development part, was something that you had just been picking up yourself and just came naturally because you enjoyed it, or how did that work out?
So starting out with Minecraft mods, there was a community online. They wanted to build a Minecraft server, and they needed someone to basically build like the mods for it. I'm like, I haven't really developed for this at all before, but I'll have a go at it. And so I built like the first product for them, and it's kind of, oh, what else can I build on top of it? What else can I do with this? So I probably spent more time actually developing on that instead of playing it. And so I just keep building on top of it, seeing what else I could add. Taking the
You
advice
felt
of
the
anyone that wanted
power.
it. Yeah, well, once you can build stuff, it's like, oh, I can just make stuff now. And yeah,
It's
exciting.
it's a vibe. It's definitely a vibe. The wait, I can just make things. I can build things. It really is.
Yeah. So I just found enjoyment from it and just kind of kept building with it. It's fun when you know what they can build something and then just expanding on top of it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Expanding is another a good point where you start small. That was what several of us have said, right? Start small and then expand on that is a important deal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it seems that my point of let's not get into the why, but just the how and what was totally misguided, and the how is the most important thing in the picture. I mean, the why is often the most important thing in the picture, but I'll take the L on that one and take it as something learned. It's really good to know, though. I'm uh, I'm seeing if I can get Kuldeep on here. Yeah, okay, Kuldeep, you got in as speaker, right? Can I get a mic check? Are you there?
Hey, mic check.
Hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, very well. So Kuldeep,
All
could
right.
could you give us the same? How did you get into to programming? What was it? What was hard or easy? And then same for BCH. What was the path into BCH? And uh, for somebody who's listening, who's thinking about building with BCH, what did you have to do to get into it? And what was hard? What was easy? What would you recommend for other people?
So my background is that I'm a software engineer. I graduated in 2017. Well, to be honest, like since the beginning, like as soon as I got so interested in programming, I wanted to search for something that has depth, like just front end, back end, or any sort of any other domain that that just facilitates you to build something, but it doesn't have that sense of depth. So, but like these technologies definitely help you build something. So I just kept on digging. I worked at various companies, and worked as a freelancer on many projects. Uh, but then near about like 2018, I got introduced to Bitcoin, and that within a couple of weeks, I got introduced to so many different questions that I didn't know existed. For example, the existence of money itself. Like, what does it even mean to own something? How money even has any value or whatsoever? Governance, economics, so many other aspects got introduced to me. That's when I thought like this thing has depth, and I have like decent amount of tools in my arsenal that I can use them and convert something into reality. That was the thought process, I would say, that got me to completely involved in Bitcoin. And then, about a few months later, I got to know about Bitcoin Cash and BCH. Bitcoin Cash and BTC is split. According to me, BCH is far more logical if you look at it that way. From at least from a technical perspective, you need bigger blocks. You need more ability for people to build something. Exactly what I was resonating with. That I need things in with me to be able to build something. So long story short, like now that I had all these things with me to to build something, my way of building is that I quickly gather up as many links as I can or as many documentations as I can for something that I need to get a good grasp of. If I have to go for building something in BCH, I'll directly go with what are all the documentation places, what are all the I'll know what to know. So nodes, what scripting language is used, how many people are involved, who are they involved, what are their backgrounds, what are they up to, as you were saying, writing blogs. So many people used to write blogs as well a few years ago. So just go through all the blogs, whatever they are writing. So I'll create a like a good mind map of all the different keywords that I have to look for when I'll start my search to actually build something, or at least have a good idea of what all is available for me to build upon. If there isn't anything, then I would just keep it in a side note that if I get too deep into it, maybe these particular areas will be pretty good to contribute in. Because back from 2014 to 2018, I used to work a lot in open source software. So I had that habit of just going through all the codes, going through all the tests, because usually people didn't write documentation, but they would write tests if the product, if the package is pretty is used in a lot of places. So I just directly jump to the tests and read through how exactly is any particular package being used, because one might not find that in a plain text format for everybody to understand, but the code doesn't lie. So you can just directly jump there. So after this entire list of things that I would do, to to start building, I'll just reiterate over again and again, and just pick something to work with.
I don't know if that's a common thing, but one of the best software engineers that I ever worked with did a lot like that. He would always do a survey first before he started any real work. He would do a survey of, and especially like you said, like the extant code, like the code that actually exists and is in use. And like you said, tests are a good isolated way to find code that works. And yeah, he would do the same thing. So that's very interesting. I'm putting that down on my list of things that are potentially good ideas for new people or people getting into BCH to think about.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So we've had a nice survey. This has been really good to hear all this. And I took a bunch of notes, and later I'll share the link um, to Sayoshi's presentation at BCH Bliss, which Machiu said is on similar topics. So I will put that in here eventually. This is great. I'm gonna share some of this list as well. Later, I'll post it up. But does anybody have something to add? Something you've thought of in the meantime to for somebody who's listening, who's thinking about building, not necessarily software development, but any kind of building and getting into it. Any other additional advice or thoughts you've had while we're in the space here?
Well, I think we should be aware that it's kind of not up to them in a certain sense. It's up to actually us who are already doing the building to constantly try and lower the barrier to entry, right? So that could be a lot of things, whether it's obviously putting out information about things, building better tooling, having stronger and easier to find community groups and so forth so that people can get involved, having educational resources, trying to find investors and make it easy for people to access capital to start their ideas. I think those are all things that we can do to make things increasingly easier for new people to join, because that's when somebody joins, they don't know what's going on. So they just kind of jump onto whatever is the first thing they see. And it's up to us to make that process as easy as possible, because once they start getting involved in the network, they'll naturally find their way onto other things. But the lower that barrier to entry can be, the better.
Yeah, I want to
Absolutely.
say, yeah, I also totally agree. So I can give a personal anecdote on this. I talked about my first project with CashCrypt and like the full stack, the full, yeah, learning the full stack so I can actually ship something. My goal was to make this, yeah, much easier than it was for me to build the same kind of thing. So if someone wants to build it now, it will be easier and better. And it's, of course, many people contributed to this. For example, we talked about Wallet Connect earlier and how this enabled some of the BCH innovation. And then also with CashCrypt today, if I can quickly plug this, we also had a new version. And one of the things that it does, it allows for you to start config free. So before there were some extra configurations if you are used to React or Vue or whatever framework you use, you still needed some extra configurations. And these are the hurdles or the things that are like, yeah, boring to get set up with the toolchain where people might quit. So yeah, exactly as Jeremy said, you want to have good getting started guides. You want to make it easy so people can quickly get started and get something up and running, and then good documentation. So if they have any questions or want to know things, that, yeah, they're documented. So for example, with CashCrypt, we have now documented all the standardness rules and the consensus rules, because the approach before this was, and I'm sure many people have seen this, that you go in one of the developer groups and you ask, what is the standardness up return limit, or what is the standardness maximum transaction size, or what is the standardness locking bytecode thing about. And it's just like there is some documentation websites, but I think it's nice to have it also, for example, integrated into CashCrypt. The same with some basic Wallet Connect documentation, or for example, if you have a smart contract, what other infrastructure do you need? Maybe you need a transaction server to monitor for liquidations, or you have like a time locks which can expire and then you want something to automatically happen, or yeah, so just to document the everything. Yeah, every question that you see pop up, making a mental note of, oh yeah, that could have been documentation. This maybe shouldn't have been a question in like a small group, and to try to make the knowledge accessible to many people at once. So yeah, I firmly agree with what Jeremy is saying, and I'm thinking along similar lines to, yeah, lower the barrier to entry as much as possible.
And having that documentation there in an active place where you're actively building is quite valuable, right? Because there's the spec, which actually was its own story that originated with general protocols. I don't know if you guys know that, but back in 2018, I think we were at the Australia conference, and at that time there was no such thing as a BCH spec at all, like nothing. And when we were trying to get together to write some code for AnyHedge, we were literally using like these super highly compressed, uh, like tons of visual artifacts, JPEGs that describe transaction construction, like the binary transaction construction, and had like illegible text, and we're like trying to figure out how to construct transactions with nonsense like that. And yeah, at the conference we put forth the idea like, hey, why don't we have a spec, and why don't we uh, raise funds to allow someone to do the spec, and then BU picked up that idea and put it into practice, and then so forth. And I think that was a big step in that kind of accessibility and making some amount of information available. But there is something to be said for having all similar information in an active place like CashCrypt, where the people who are building have specific things that they need to know. It's quite valuable. And also libauth uh, is like that, where you can get in and read the real details just looking at the code. So I guess there is at some level the code is the spec, but as much documentation as available is very nice to have. All right, anybody wanted to throw something else down before we hang up? All right, I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your stories, and hope this will be useful. We'll try to cut out some clips and maybe come up with a summary or a list, and see if we can provide some information that lowers that barrier to entry and gives people a good idea of where to start when they want to build something and make a difference in the world. All right, thank you all very much. Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
See you guys.
BCH at 480. Let's fucking go.